And good morning, Breakfast Clubbers.
Good morning.
Hi. Yeah, it's a little cold. Get over it.
It's not that cold.
The January, I think it's probably gonna be. Ow.
See, it's not that cold.
We're looking for another permanent location, but I just haven't been looking really hard. But you know, it's I like it back here. The problem is going to be June, July. You know, that's not going to work out real well. Well, we may kind of set it up and use this more permanent if we need to. But if you guys got a good place, let us know. Deer Valley Airport, you know, is probably the next solution, but it's so far north, you know, and East Valley, they're bad enough, you know, wanting to deal here. So anyway, this is, let me give you a chronology of what's going on. Last month, instead of having the Breakfast Club, our first Saturday was the Mises Circle. We did it. How many of you went to the Mises Circle event? Okay, so a lot of you did. What happened was Jeff Deist is now head of the Mises Circle, and the Mises Institute was a product of Ron Paul's campaign back in '88, and Lou Rockwell started LouRockwell.com and the Mises Institute back then to kind of, you know, emphasize the teachings of von Mises and economics and Austrian economy and, you know, this kind of stuff. Well, it had a big impact on educating a lot of people to make you the smartest guy at the water cooler. When we would go to Pork Fest, which is Porcupine Freedom Festival, and the Free State Project in New Hampshire, in the summer they have a festival there. And you would talk to these young kids, they're in their mid-20s, and they would be talking about articles that they would read daily as downloads on their Kindles from the Mises Institute. So as they're traveling in airplanes or they're driving up, they're listening to Tragedy and Hope, 21-hour podcast on everything you ever want to know about all the people behind the, you know, New World We Rule You people, okay? So this has been an amazing transformation that as activists, a lot of you from the Breakfast Club, for those of you new to the Breakfast Club has been around for over 40 years. This has been since the 60s, and it was, you know, God, country, family, freaking gonna save America and all them damn communists, you know? Well, then it kind of got to where people started to realize where the real problem was. It was this government. Well, there were a lot of people over the decades from the 50s, 60s, 70s that understood that. Harry Everingham, that started the Breakfast Club, I went to him one time in the mid-90s, and I go, hey, man, or early 90s, I'd already spoken at the Breakfast Club before, and I said, hey, this libertarian thing, you know, you talk to this guy and this guy, he goes, no, don't have anything to do with him. I already know. I go, he just doesn't know, he's just Republican, just whatever. Come to find out when I did research later, that in the 50s, there was a guy named Robert Lefebvre, I think it was Robert Lefebvre, that he had overlapped with in the 50s, working against the United Nations having curriculum inside the Girl Scout handbook, okay? The United Nations are coming in, the Boy Scout and Girl Scout. You'll remember to have, you know, the American flag and the United Nations flag. They're getting us all prepped for this. Well, they were hardcore against this, and they were allies. So what I realized is that they knew each other. He knew that they were good, and this is what the problem was. Butler Schaefer, a constitutional law professor that just retired this summer in Los Angeles, Southwestern University there, what they did is he was part of this college in Colorado Springs that was put on by Lefebvre. It was called the Freedom College, later become Rampart and so on. A lot of the people that were movers and shakers, the TED Talk people back in the day, they would send their management staff, entire levels of their corporations there to get 2-week training of I Get It Now. That's what Harry had a problem with. All of the great activists, all of the people that were the most influential in America would go there and realize that our own government was one of the biggest problems. So his thing was they took all these great activists, all this money, and they put them in and turned them against our own government. Well, that's bad. We're not against government, we're just against their government. So that was Harry's cognitive dissonance that he had. He was like, he was kind of messed up in the head on that one. He's like, yeah, but our government, because he was locked into that. So when Harry passed away and we took the Breakfast Club and it kind of went more libertarian, it was, with the idea that we're not going to be pledging allegiance to the flag, We're not going to be doing a lot of the, Republican stuff. We're not going to, and we're going to be, eat meat and retreat to our own little, doing our own activism stuff. Because a lot of the people here that come here are our own activists. When we did the Mises Circle last month, I saw something that I've been waiting on for decades. It was this. It was an understanding that it's not politics. The only time Rand Paul even got mentioned was Mark Victor up there of all people. Okay, you want to slap him. Mark Victor of all people goes, yeah, and everybody can do anything. I don't even care if you run for office like Rand Paul. I mean, that was the only time it ever got mentioned. His dad's up there, okay? A big significant portion of the Levolution was there. Jeff Dice Mises goes up and he meets this person, we're walking around talking afterwards and everything. Oh, you know them? You know them? I go, we all know, everybody knows everybody in Arizona. They were dealing with different segments, the meetup here, and the precinct committee men of the party of the whatever here, and these other revolutionaries here, and these young kids. They didn't realize it was a tapestry of all of us have been coordinating for almost a decade. I go, you don't get it, man. Arizona, why do you think it's always coming out of Arizona? Freedom's phoenix rises from the ashes. When they had young people up there going, I was inoculated against the blah blah and indoctrination of the government schools by reading, yada yada, and went to this and learned that, and I'm better off cuz. You had 25 to 30-year-old young people that went into professions, got their degrees, became doctors, financial interests, educators, whatever, and they have gotten exposure to the libertarian message, the philosophy, and Austrian economics. And they understood this when they were young, when they were teenagers. So, the emphasis of the Mises Institute is like education. Well, they bring in Dr. Ron Paul to, talk about it and so on, but he also has his own curriculum, Ron Paul curriculum. So now you have young kids growing up not being so indoctrinated. Then you get to the next part, the education of the adults. People that know there's something wrong, they just don't know where to look or what to do. You have things like tragedy and hope in their brain. You have School Sucks podcast and project. You have Ron Paul's curriculum. You have the Mises Institute. There's so many opportunities for us to be able to educate ourselves and everybody else that we don't have to do. It's already there. So the only thing that needed to be done was for us to emphasize that. So I go to, I already knew what needed to be done. I go to Jeff Dice and I said, if we had a campaign that promoted Mises information, would you, not poo-poo that? I don't need you to do anything. You just go, wow, there's some people who must like us in peace. That's all I want you to do. Just stay out of the way. Because what Mises Circle and these other organizations will become is what Dr. Ron Paul was for the Levolution. It never said vote Ron Paul. It never said anything about it. It was just how long could we keep him on the podium? How long could we keep this message in play? And we went another election cycle. And now here comes Rand, and they're just kind of kinder, gentler, kind of almost libertarian, and that's not working out so well for them. So we need another campaign or candidate that we can emphasize where the solution is. So this is what I decided to do. It's been 8 years since we did, or more, 8.5 years, since we did the Levolution, and we started with the signs and everything. I already talked to a bunch of people around here that helped with the sign production. They're in. I talked to people around the country. Connecticut, New York, New Hampshire, Florida, Chicago, here, and LA. What we're doing, this, you see these, that's one of the banners that we had for Freedom's Phoenix billboards. It's not my debt. It has a baby in the womb up there, and it says, it's not my debt when they pass the TARP. There was another one of babies with barcodes on their butts being scanned and so on. But, so I have 4 of these signs that I had left over out here. My son needed it. We just painted his, Ford truck. We spent all week sand and prep and kind of just finished it yesterday, and he'll be here today to clean up the rest of this. When we get done with that project, behind the scenes, we've been getting artwork already. I'm going to start passing this out. What we did is we go, we get this done. We're going to start doing sign production, but this time we're going to do it with silk screening and some spraying. The signs are going to go all over the country, starting the end of next weekend, that they are shipped, and they're going to be 3x6 signs, and it has, kind of give you an idea, there's horizontal and vertical versions of it. It's Darth Vader wearing Uncle Sam's top hat, and it says Stop Wars, Home Educate. Now, the QR code that goes here, and some of them have Defending Archimedes, and then there is a card. I'm going to pass these around. In 07-08 in New Hampshire, we did 10,000 cards. These cards were all about, it was a Christmas card that was in support of Ron Paul. It was, Ron Paul, whatever, love, spread the word, and so on. So this is a Christmas card, and on the back, it has the Stop Wars logo and the QR code and everything. I'll pass these around. Now, these images, let me go ahead and just start passing around. What we're doing is these signs are being mass produced and going around, and the weekend of the 18th, that is when the new movie Star Wars is being released. At all of the theaters, these signs are going up around the theaters. People in line are going to be, getting YouTubes and videos of them standing in the line holding this sign. They're getting all these cards as collectible, whatever the heck. Stop Wars, Stop Wars. The sign campaign is really a video campaign. It's around the country we have all these hundreds of people, and we made the card just small enough that you can put it in your back pocket so they have to carry it around with them. Put it in their purse, they put it in their back pocket, they got a little reminder of, we got a campaign. It all goes to one page of a project we call Defending Archimedes. Archimedes, genius, 500 BC, something, whatever, creates pie in his head. He's one of those guys. The point is that there are so many geniuses of Generation Next coming up that they just want them to be in service of the state. They don't want us out here thinking ourselves free. They don't want us to be able to not need their government schools and to certainly see what the problem is. So what we want to emphasize is all these different organizations like Mises Institute, Tragedy and Hope, School Sucks Podcast, Ron Paul's Curriculum, as the solution to stopping wars is that we educate ourselves on why we keep getting into them all the time. And if you don't understand what's really going on, you don't understand why all this stuff happens. If you really know who, what, where is in charge of how we're going to rule you, then it starts making sense what's going on in Syria and Third World Wars and and Russia and China and all this stuff starts to make perfect sense. We want it to make sense. Because when all this stuff happens, and the mass shootings and everything, what's the first thing that happens? The next day, the kids are in the mandatory youth indoctrination camps, and they're getting told what's what. We got to break the cycle. That's what I saw had changed. Is those that were most effective inside the political movement had realized, and with a whole generation next of young people for 8 years, now from teenagers that are having families, a white picket fence, and just got their BMW payment, okay? They're starting to realize, they're going, look, man, we have to inoculate ourselves and find information so we understand what's going on, and the infrastructure is there that wasn't there in 07. It is enormous what has happened. We have a far better grasp on what's going on, where to get the information, how to learn what we need to even know to learn, how to train our young children going up. Little baby Neo here. He's not going, it's on a, undocumented human Bitcoin national tour of, bite me, okay? He doesn't have a birth certificate, but he's got a Bitcoin wallet, okay? So this concept, this idea that we can free ourselves just needs to be promoted a little bit. So a lot of people, how come I haven't done the revolution, Levolution for Rand? How come I haven't done it? There's a bunch of projects and things that we've done. I'm going to do this local. We're going to be really busting butt here in Arizona. But we want to seed it like we did the Levolution, and we already have people that did it before that are willing to do it again.
We'll put it on the motorhome.
Thank you. So then we got, that's a good idea. So then we got next Saturday, I had to pay, it's $500 for me to get 3 foot wide, 1,800 feet long of the material that I want to use that I can ship, and you don't have to have grommets, and it holds well, and it goes on. I mean, this material is the stuff that I wanted to use. But for me to get it in time to do what I needed to do, to have it by next Thursday night, so that the Christmas party on the 12th, that day, that during the day on the 12th, that Saturday, and the day before the 11th, we're going to be doing nothing but making up to 300 signs. Now, I already have orders to ship around the country. But to get it in time, it cost me $1,000 in shipping from New York.
Gotta watch your P's, Ernie.
And I'm like, whatever. So I go, all right. Thursday night, the stuff comes in UPS. Friday, we start producing. Saturday, we finish up. Saturday afternoon, night, we have the Christmas party. We party. Monday at the latest, and usually some of the stuff needs to ship out on Friday. That's why I got to do it Friday. And Monday, it goes out to distribution across the country. The cards are being drop shipped straight to these different places around the country. And these are the designs that you see. The one that we're going to use is the Starfield one. They're going to light speed, the Star Wars. On the back and on the front, we'll have the love card. It's all for YouTubes. It's all for videos. It's all for the activists to get this started. I am not going to be playing politics this election cycle. We're going to be going straight to public opinion, and the opinion is you need to home educate. Not homeschool, you're not fish, you're not being corralled. Educate yourself. So this is how we're going to be. For 4 years, I've had defendingarchimedes.com sitting there as a project waiting for the right time. And when I was at Mises Circle, those of you that went, all of a sudden, it wasn't political. It was philosophical. That was the change that I've been looking for. All of this has been waiting for this. So if you guys wanted to get on and have some fun and be here next Friday and Saturday, that's the launch. That's the time of you put hands on I was part of. Now, when we did the Lovolution and started that, it started off with 15, 20 people came in. And the first person that we finished the first stencil, the first night, we started from zero, and the first person to make the sign was that kid that Keith brought. What was his name? Tyler. He's 10, 11 at the time? He was a kid. We go, you get to make the first sign. Who's going to make the first sign this time? Nobody saw what was going to happen, Lo. They what the hell, how did you, what? And I'm going, God, because you don't get it. Where are you looking? What are you valuing? What metric are you evaluating? Is it time? I say it is, and I'm going to prove it. Again. Now, what we're going to do is we have Adam Kokesh is here wintering, and just finished his Freedom Tour, Campfire, going around the country tour for his book, Freedom. This is one of the big, giant pieces in this whole thing that will certainly have the links and everything on that page, because this book is just skip to the end. It's a 3-hour listen on an MP3. It'll take you a day to read the damn thing. And it's awesome. So I'm going, all right. We have a criminal defense attorney in Rome that has offices in Berlin and Madrid. I'd already given the book to him, given it to some other people around the world. They're supportive of this. If we can come up with some kind of project, he's going to talk about translating it into Chinese, but this stuff costs money. We have the ability. You want one world government? Fine. I give you one world Lovolution. Let's rock. Adam Kokesh, get us up to speed on what he's been doing. Adam Kokesh.
Thanks for that, Ernie. It's always fun coming back here, especially for the holidays. It's actually more like visiting my parents than actually visiting my parents. And I assume everybody here is part of this incredible community that's grown up around Ernie and Donna. So if we could just give it up one time for our hosts here.
We were part of their community. Look how old they are.
We just got to travel the country, my fiance Macy and I, and we've been living out of the RV trailer there with the Freedom logo for a year and 2 months now. It's been an amazing journey, and to see the kinds of communities that are springing up all over the country, the kinds of models that people like Ernie pioneered, the ways of bringing people together, it's really incredible. And when Ernie says, "Is it time?" You know, I wonder if he's referencing the speech that I did in 2008 at the end of Ron Paul's first Republican presidential campaign. And it's a question you ask rhetorically, because once you get it, yeah, what's the answer? Is it time? It was time when we first figured this out. It was time decades ago. And what we see now, I think, gives us a little more of an historical picture of where we're going with this. And I know Ernie hates metrics, so I'm going to talk a lot about metrics. Because everybody loves needling Ernie, right? Well, one of the things that came to my mind on this tour was about applying the metrics, the standards of metrics to our activism, with the same cold, hard, mathematical ruthlessness with which we evaluate economics. If we see this, and there's a chapter in the book Freedom that is something I think about a lot, especially in terms of this. Everything is economics. I'm sure it's a concept you're all familiar with from various sources, but I'll just reiterate to make sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. That right now we are having an economic exchange of energy and ideas and time and attention. And that's a voluntary exchange that we all perceive that we benefit from, so we stay engaged in that exchange. I mean, unless you all get up and walk out in 30 seconds, and I understand that's happened to me before. But when I look at activism, what is the value that we're creating? And what I figured out a while ago was that there are really only 3 legitimate metrics of freedom activism. One, and this is the one I'm going to come back to and focus on, is winning converts. And I think we kind of shy away from that word and that mentality of winning converts. And you can define it however you want, but I think we all know it's pretty clear. You can tell the difference between someone who thinks for themselves and someone who doesn't. It's a really nice distinction, right? And you can tell that maybe we haven't figured it all out yet. Nobody ever really gets to, except for Ernie. He's got it all figured out. If you want to have all the answers, you got to put the kind of time in that he has. But people who think for themselves come together around the important truths that we come to as conclusions from that process. But I've got a long history of activism that includes a lot of political theater, street theater, civil disobedience, and YouTube videos. We make a lot of soft impressions. We brush over the cortex, as Ernie likes to say, and plant some seeds and change some opinions. But those are people who you can have a really deep impact on. And I can tell you this from my anti-war work. My real start in full-time activism was with the Iraq Veterans Against the War. They go back to voting. They go back to a status lifestyle. It doesn't really change them unless you show them a fully different direction. So the second metric is reducing coercion in society. When you understand that the ideal of a voluntary society is a non-violent society, you connect it to violence. You look at the long-term historical picture of violence. I love quoting or referring to the work of Professor Pinker at Harvard, who has demonstrated in so many historical analyses that we are living in the most peaceful times in human history. You are less likely today than ever before to be subject to violence at the hands of another human being. Don't believe the news. I know, crazy, right? And this is a really beautiful thing to celebrate, to step back and appreciate. I mean, how many of you have seen Game of Thrones? Watch Game of Thrones? Okay. I couldn't watch more than 5 minutes of it. It was pretty gruesome. And have we not come a long way since then? Just the very texture of violence in society, even on the scale of war, is on the decline. So anything that you can do to forward that, you get a bad cop fired, you get a tax reduced, you get a law changed, whatever it is, we can measure that, even though it's kind of in the abstract of how do you measure relative violence, relative violations of freedom. And there is a way, if you really keep in mind everything is economics, what is the reduction of value? Now, quick aside, we've heard a lot of people who misuse the term capitalism, but when they say ownership of the means of production, the seeking of profit, they just defined those terms wrong, not the concept of capitalism. The ultimate means of production is the individual human being, and the ultimate measure of productivity and value isn't widgets or dollars, but human happiness. And we can see how much that is reduced by the violence of government. So the third metric is, are you having fun?
Whoa!
And I know that's the one metric that Ernie won't object to.
Yeah. There's a couple of seats up here if anybody needs to sit down.
So, coming back to what I think is the most important, winning converts. How many of us are there? Is it time? To me, I'd like to answer that question in terms of critical mass. And the consensus that we got on the tour, when I asked people, how many of us are there? It's an important question, right? And you're not going to be able to answer it precisely, but we know, how many billions of people there are in the world. We know there's 320-something million Americans. We can at least look here and say, get an idea of it. And if you define it as people who think for themselves, I like to, when I was on tour, I would say, can you understand freedom as a principle or a philosophical concept and at least attempt to apply it consistently? Not that we're all going to come to the exact same conclusions, but by that definition, the consensus was that there are about 1 million of us.
1 million?
Be a little less than 1/3%. You say socially liberal, fiscally conservative, yeah, you're going to get 15 to 20%. Those people are still very, very statist and act like it and vote like it. So you can play with the criteria. You could say there's 3 million. You could say there's 500,000, but you get the point, right? So here's the really exciting part, is I would ask, when we had bigger crowds, how many of you came to this realization within the last 5 years? We're going to get deep into the metrics here. We're going to play a little libertarian fantasy math, so bear with me. I know you guys have done some version of this in your head before, because you have to ask yourself, where is this going? Is it time? Well, you're measuring time, right, Ernie? So if there's about 1 million of us now, again, the consensus that we had on the tour, when I would ask this question, we'd usually get 70 to 80% of the hands raised. People who got to this understanding in the last 5 years. So, if you can play along with my hand-arm signals here, we're going to make some little graphs in the air. Here's 1 million of us. Here's time going backward, right? 2015, 2010, 2000, 1990, 1980, 1970. You guys see the curve forming here? And you can go back. 1971, 72, Foundation of the Libertarian Party, John Birch Society, FEE, a couple others. Ernie, what are the big chunks I'm missing here? When there were just a few 10,000 of us, maybe.
United we stand, we the people of the Arizona Breakfast Club. Back in the 50s, that came to Arizona. There's been, goes back a long way.
So it looks really nice, doesn't it? This beautiful curve. Now, you're tempted to think it's an exponential curve, just to show the perspective here. It can't be. There's a population limit. It's an S-curve of adoption. If you have confidence, as I do, that realizing freedom, embracing thinking for yourself, embracing self-ownership and voluntarism is like hygiene. We just figure that stuff out. You don't have to argue with people to brush their teeth eventually. You just have to smile, right? You want to keep your teeth? Hey, you want to be happy? You want to live better? You want a lifestyle like Ernie has here, where he has so much independence, where you see people all over the country like we did on this tour, in a massive lifestyle shift towards homesteading, towards independence, to whatever degree is practical for people, living financially independently, using Bitcoin, barter, all of that stuff. So, if you have that confidence, as I do, that everyone is capable of getting this. And I'll come back to this and do a little demographic breakdown and tell you how many therapists we're going to have to hire before we can end the state. But what we see, yes, sir.
I was thinking back in the 1800s and 1850s, didn't everybody have this thought that you're referring to?
I think back then, no, there was a different grounding to it, and you're right to point out that the intellectual roots of this are much older than 50 years.
Yeah.
But it never had any kind of widespread adoption in the sense that people actually demanded to live that way, except with a few exceptions. And people cite, 15th century Ireland for a brief period lived largely by voluntary principles. But what you see in the widespread nature of people being ruled in sadism is that, oh, God told you that you should be the king and you're going to rule over us? Okay. And while there may have been an intellectual awareness at certain levels, never at any critical mass of political momentum that was able to overcome that dominant paradigm of ruling in the system. Now, some of you might go, well, what about democracy? Like, that's not any better, right? And in many ways, you look at the bureaucracy that is produced, or bureaucracies around the world, and the wars, you could think that it's worse. And you could very much make that case that the government has come today, when half of your income goes to the state, in America at least, that it's come to have a more dominant role in our lives. But I would argue then that the more important thing is how much violence is backed up by it, how much violence is it justified. And when it was the age of monarchies, and it's funny to think that we still have a few lingering ones, we see the timeline very overlapping in different places geographically, that if you want to do violence and say that it's righteous today, if you want to do something immoral that we know fundamentally is wrong, you have to at least, you can't just say, God told me to do it, unless you're George W. Bush, right? You have to say, well, we had a vote. We had the will of the people on our side. And I think that stepping forward from monarchies to democracies is actually progress in terms of the raising of the standard of ethics in society. If what we have inherently as human beings as conscientious self-owning creatures is this ability to own ourselves and to seek voluntary relations that is really fundamental to human existence, it's a massive progress to go from law of the jungle, whoever can pick up the biggest rock is in charge, and violence is sort of acceptable. You fight for your tribe, to you fight for your clan, to your monarchy, to whatever, and to today, where instead of having this widespread category of accepted modes of violence, we've relegated it to the state. And I think that's, to me, that squares with the historical decline in violence over the millennia of human existence. So, a lot of the stuff we go back and forth on the history forever. But if I may, just to get on with where we're going historically with this, because this is really encouraging. You see this curve, right? Back to the curve. Where does that suggest we're going? Remember, what I was getting is it's not exponential, it's an S curve of adoption. It's not going to be a neat curve, it's not going to be a perfect mathematical curve. There are a lot of historical things, anomalies, phase shifts, points at which you wake up the next day and you go, oh wow, everybody gets it. And maybe that everybody is just where we go from 1/3% to 5%. Maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 50%, who knows? But from this curve, you can make some very interesting projections, right? Mm-hmm. So I think if you make first your worst case scenario, your pessimistic curve on this. Let's say we all quit all of our activism. And all we do is infect people around us by casually letting it rub off. You think even if half of this million of us are already in cabins in the woods and you'll never hear from them again, right? You think of us million today, we can wake up one other person on average in the next 5 years? Has the general paradigm shifted enough? Are people receptive enough that if they lived with someone who embraced these values, that it would rub off on them over 5 years? Or if you worked with them, or you saw them, a couple times a week even, or they were part of your family? Pretty conservative estimate, right? Well, if we just double every 5 years, depending on how you define critical mass, 7 or 8 decades, tops. But that's not nearly as fun or interesting as the optimistic projection we can make from this curve. Because I think that with the general level of awareness in this country, as many news stories have come out about corruption at the highest levels, the kind of stories that, not just because you can look up the truth on the internet now that we have the truth button, as Ernie calls it, just one click away, but stories of such moral depravity that it's really hard these days to justify the status quo, to say that you're not open to hearing a proposal for a different system. So, I think even if we quit all of our activism, at this point in history, at least in the United States, I say we could double every year. Now, for those of you who have been active since the 1800s, Ernie?
80s.
Oh, sorry, 80s. Maybe you remember how hard it used to be to wake people up. And I've been doing this for 8 years full time now, if you count my start with Iraq Veterans Against the War. And even now, holy crap, it is so much easier. And I learned this talking to people on the street on the Campfire Freedom Tour. Hey, they see our logo. Hey, what's this about? Creating a more peaceful, harmonious, and productive society by abolishing government altogether. And they go, yeah, I want that kind of freedom. I ask people, hey, do you think you would be better off with or without the entire United States federal government? And most of them, you give them a concrete proposal like that. They have to think about it for a second. They have to do a little math in their heads. But it never takes more than about 30 seconds. Yeah, we could do without that entire thing. You can't really justify having a government that big, that centralized anymore. That's how ready people are for this now. And I majored in psychology for undergrad, and especially studied social psychology and developmental psychology. And one of the studies that we learned about that has really stuck with me, and I love the idea of being able to do these experiments. Man, if I've always fantasized, like if the freedom movement had $1 billion, we'd have a lab about experimenting, like how to wake people up more effectively. But by the time we got that kind of funding, we'd already be at that critical mass anyway, right?
South Park.
So there's an experiment where they put, and I don't know if I have the exact details of this right, but you'll get the point. They take 10 people, put them in a room, and they say that they're all part of the experiment, and they're all part of the experiment. But only one of them's a subject. The rest are all actors. And they put a piece of paper on the table that has a bunch of lines on it, and one of them is obviously shorter than the rest. And they're numbered like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. And they pass it around the table, and they say, which line is the shortest? And all of the colluding actors go first, and they give the wrong answer. Like, it's obvious that line number 3 is the shortest, but they'll all say, no, it's number 4. Number 4, yeah, number 4, number 4, number 4. And it comes around to the one person who's the real subject of the experiment, and they go, oh, crap. my eyes do not square with the reality being presented by my peers. And you have to, and they've demonstrated that even for something as simple as which of these lines is the shortest, people will succumb to the peer pressure. And I don't think I need to get into the parallel with statism here, right? But you go back to 1970, when the people who were waking up then were the only ones. And man, did you have to get out that ruler and check those lines over and over and over again before you had the confidence to say, no. That's the short line. And I point this out in part to differentiate those of us who have been around for a while from those who are just getting on board today. And I've talked about this in terms of Bitcoin. I know Bitcoin fans here?
No.
No? how many, maybe this will be more, how many are professionally involved with Bitcoins in some form? Oh, just really?
That's it?
What?
Ernie, you gotta raise your hand for that.
Define professionally.
Like you
Okay.
You live your life on it. That's what you do.
No, I'm not even in the same category as Morpheus over here. You know?
Right?
And no one's in my category.
So,
How many accept Bitcoin in payment for stuff?
yeah, how many take Bitcoin? How many?
Okay, that's
all right.
a little bit more. Yeah.
So, what I would say,
Doing a deal right now.
when Bitcoin was first gaining its widespread adoption, how much thought? Because people were trying to pitch Bitcoin with the white paper. Oh, you got to read Satoshi's white paper. Most Americans don't even know whether or not the Federal Reserve is part of the government or not. You think they're going to read a white paper about Bitcoin? How much thought did the average American put into whether or not they were going to use US dollars? They don't even, maybe because you take away the choice, they don't even think about it, right? Fair enough, Federal Reserve notes.
Yeah, they're not dollars.
So, the point applies to how people adapt from statism as well. How much thought does the average American statist put into whether or not they're going to be a statist? They might put a lot of thought into what flavor of statist they will be, but whether or not they endorse this concept of massive institutionalized control and violence? No. Zero. Now, most of us who are here today have read at least the equivalent, probably of 50 books on average, if you add up all the documentaries and blog posts and YouTube videos. The amount of data that we've had to take on to remeasure, to go, that line is the shortest. No. Despite what you say, the state is an unethical institution. I have absolute confidence in that.
Right.
But we're past that phase, yes.
I just want to say one thing. The tools that we have with the internet, high bandwidth video, things like that, and the work that you've done for the public's benefit to share that with the world. I mean, we're able to share these ideas so much faster now, and that's one of the reasons why this is all happening.
Yes.
He's gonna make this point.
Don't worry,
Save questions and comments at the end, and he'll be here forever.
Sorry, I just have
No worries. No.
You don't have to nothing.
No, that's important. I think we can all appreciate the acceleration of the internet effect. There's actually a section on the book called The Internet Effect, and it's very important to see how that accelerates all of this. The point I really want to make, the state will not end a day sooner because you read another book about monetary policy.
No.
The state will not end a day sooner because you studied more history. The state will not end a day sooner because you decided you had to know all of the details of just how bad we're all getting screwed. Because you watched some more bad cop porn. Because you spent another couple hours on YouTube watching my videos. So just on the way in here, I can't even avoid it now. Someone mentioned something about dancing in Washington, D.C. Has everybody here seen the Thomas Jefferson dance party video from 4 years ago? I got chokeslammed by a cop for dancing in civil disobedience at the Jefferson Memorial in Washington,
that
D.C. No, not really. Slam
Gyrating your
dancing.
body.
So, super viral video. It was a lot of fun. And people still come to me today and came to me on the tour and said, you know what, Adam? That woke me up, and they're all lying. No one went, oh my God, did you see that guy gets chokeslammed by the cops? Yeah, and the Fed. Yeah, there's a bit of a leap there, right? The state will end sooner because we learn to talk to the people around us about what we care about and what's important. One of my, I think it was the video from the tour that got the most views. We weren't doing regular video production on the road, but just as it happened. And when I was in New Jersey, I was giving a speech in a basement in a bar where a guy came down to serve some food to someone and overheard me making a very pointed intellectual criticism of the ethical nature of the United States military, and went up in stairs and told his 280-pound just ox of a man buddy, who happened to be a former soldier and a former cop who got fired for beating up his girlfriend, and got him all riled up to come down and meet me, and with his posse of "hold me back, guys," and came down while I was coming out of the bathroom downstairs and said, "If you have anything bad to say about the military, we need to talk outside." And I said, "Well, it's okay, we can talk right here." And I'll just interrupt myself for a second to ask, how many of you are fans or familiar with nonviolent communication? Excellent. That's way more than the general population, and it's awesome to see that people who care about communicating in a way to maximize value are aware of this, and it's very prevalent within our movement. Well, a lot of libertarians, though, hear the term nonviolent communication, and they go, "It's communication, of course it's nonviolent, screw you!" Yeah, that's the problem. And if you accept violence as a metaphor, obviously, in this sense, about judgmental communication, it's really about how do you maximize the exchange of value in a conversation by removing all of the garbage that we put in terms of emotional manipulation between ourselves and get down to our feelings and needs and being able to make direct requests of each other. So from a purely capitalist perspective, it's extremely valuable. And you can't go wrong in a conversation when you're dealing with someone who's upset by turning the attention to how they are feeling and what they need. So when this guy comes downstairs and looks like he's about to beat the crap out of me, I say, "Wow, you sound really angry. Are you angry?" "Yeah, I'm angry." "Well, it doesn't feel very good, does it?" "No, it doesn't." "Well, let's do something about that." And we had a little bit of an exchange along those lines for the first 30 seconds, and I was very tense, and everybody in the room, they had their cell phones up by then, but he was tunnel vision on me. And I think it was a couple minutes later into the conversation, he's looking at me, and here's somebody make a snide remark over his shoulder, and turns, and as he does, he's deer in the headlights as he looks at like 4 cell phones making video of this conversation, and turns back and is that much more polite from then on, and I ended up getting him to take a book. So I want to say at least how what I'm focusing on now fits into this, and how these observations have influenced my activism. And right now we're still living in the trailer now in Ernie's driveway, and we're in the process of buying some land near Ash Fork between Williams and Seligman, and building an Earthship style home and setting up our own homestead there, and bringing back the podcast as a 5 days a week pre-tape, 30 to 40 minutes. And we're working on getting the audiobook illustrated, like for video. The illustrated essay style YouTube video where you have just voiceover over moving clips and music, things like that. So getting the whole audiobook as sections turned into videos. We have some great talent that we're working with on that. David Kirk West, director, you've probably seen some of his work online without having known his name. We're working on translations. I think this is very important in how the book was written. that it be globally applicable. So we've had a lot of volunteer translators, and we haven't had a single one actually complete a translation. And in this process, you do at some point have to hire a copy editor who's going to say, yes, I got paid, I stamped my reputation on this being, a clean product. And then being able to help people make this leap for homesteading to a different lifestyle. A lot of people, when they wake up from 100% status lifestyle, it's pretty easy to trim back a few things and maybe get down to 80%, but you're still working a job, you're still paying withholding taxes, you're still paying a mortgage, whatever the case may be, or rent. It's hard to break out of that. Maybe you can homeschool your kids, but you got to worry about CPS. You can you can have a garden in your backyard, but chickens are going to piss off your neighbors. So what we've seen is that people are increasingly making this leap to a fully homesteaded lifestyle, one way or another. And so creating the kind of media that encourages and inspires people to do that and make the tangible shift in their lifestyles. So we have plans for a couple things that are kind of off the record at this point, getting ready for doing some citywide book drops. It's the nice thing about having a book that's just 100 pages long. You can actually get it printed for as little as 29 cents each, and then delivered by bulk mail. You get it printed with a matte cover that you can have a bulk mailer print an address label on, and they will deliver them for 29 cents each. So we have, I'm very honored to know that Alma, who's also staying here, is working on a drop for, I forget, what's the county she's in? It's only got 2,000 people in it in eastern Arizona. Is it Concho? Where's
Cochise?
Is that? Well, anyway, there's one county out there where she's Apache County. Is that it's only 2,000 people in the whole county? Yeah. So she's gonna go door to door.
No, it's bigger than that.
No, I don't think so.
Concho me, the area.
That's reservation.
Okay, well, she's hitting the whole neighborhood of people who are kind of a homestead community to say, hey, by the way, what you're doing is awesome. Here's a little more philosophical basis for it. And putting it out there in a way that sort of leads everybody in the community to want to have an opinion on this. So, for those of you who haven't read the book, I started it when I was in jail 2 years ago, and there's only one. People say I'm a good writer. It's not true. People say I'm original or a great thinker. That's absolutely not true. But what I did come up with was one genius idea for what this book should be as the ultimate conversion tool. And I'm very happy to say now that it's been out for a little over a year, we're in our third printing. We have another 10,000 copies coming in the next couple of weeks. We have over 1 million downloads. I don't know the exact number. My guess is actually somewhere between 1.2 and 1.3. The audiobook is doing extremely well. We have it getting passed around and reposted in a lot of different places. So the concept of the book is based on how people wake up. And I mean, how many of you guys know the guy who was converted by being yelled at in a bar? Or losing a Facebook flame war? No? It doesn't happen that way, does it, right? Or they saw that one really good meme that you made, and that did it for them.
No.
It happens in quiet contemplation. To embrace a wholly different worldview, a wholly different way of thinking. Sometimes it happens in the course of long conversations with people. Sometimes, and Ernie knows this, that there are people who wandered into your audience and said 3 years later, wow, it finally sunk in and I've embraced your way of thinking. And I've had the same thing with my podcast. And the best feedback I get isn't, hey, thanks for getting the dancing policy in DC changed. It's, you woke me up. You changed my perspective. And so I am now in the quest to be as ruthless as possible in making sure that my activism is efficient as possible and waking people up, focused on getting that same basic message out there and helping people develop the communication skills to get out and encourage people to share this message with the people around them. So the book takes all the best features of every book that I've ever heard people cite as part of their waking up process. It's short. It's only 100 pages long, like the law or anatomy of the state. It's in short sections like Liberty Defined, nothing more than 2.5 pages. Most of them are about 1.5 pages. It's 60 short sections in a 100-page book. It's in line with the principles of nonviolent communication. There's no judgment, no wishful thinking, no opinions, no conjecture, no unnecessarily demeaning language. It's very, I invited 300 people to read it and help edit it while it was a draft as a Google Drive document. And I said, poke as many holes in this as you can. My idea was not to be an awesome writer and write an awesome book, but to get the message out and to answer as many but what if questions as possible, but what about this, but what about this? And in as short a period as possible. I actually wrote the book by taking all of your best Facebook status updates and just combining them and putting them into chapters, and then giving my editors instructions and saying, like, I want the book to be really good, so now make it really good. But in a very serious sense, it's polished. We said we wanted to adhere to these principles. We went over it, we went to the thesaurus a million times to make this book truly in line with all of the principles of how you communicate this as easily as possible. And the results so far have been incredible. I guarantee if you get someone to read this, they might not get the entire thing right away, but they will at least come to equally divergent a worldview from the mainstream as we have embraced. It's impossible to be presented with this reality and not adjust your worldview. More importantly, there's a section on soldiering, just 2 pages, that explains what it really means to be a soldier. And I got a lot of questions, as you might imagine, from being a veteran myself, being an outspoken anti-war activist, from people saying, hey, my buddy's about to join the military, hey, my cousin's in boot camp right now, hey, we get a lot of questions about vets dealing with veterans issues as well and PTSD. But for people who say, hey, I got my buddy's about to enlist, what can I do? My brother, my sister, say, well, if they're really your friend, they'll read 2 pages if you ask them to, right? No one has read the section on soldiering and then enlisted in the United States military.
Woo! Wow.
So, at very least, it's serving as an inoculant in that capacity. And it's just to see what's happening in the movement today and how people are embracing this and getting this and sharing it, and to have just provided one more tool for that is incredible. And I don't know, I don't think that necessarily this book is going to be the silver bullet, but I know that it's going to be critical in expanding us beyond the current demographic of us, INTJ white males crawling out of our parents' basements, to slightly more normal people. Yes, I know this is tough for a lot of libertarians to deal with right now. If we want to grow the movement, all of us super nerdy types are already here. We have to learn to talk to the normals now. And take the message to them in a way that we can say, look, this will improve your life right now. So I'll just end with one other idea that was the part of the book that I actually started first when I was in jail. Happiness causes freedom. And we've really been misled. Going back to Thomas Jefferson, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To think of that as a sequence. And of course, if you don't have life, you can't have liberty. And you would think if you can't have liberty, you cannot pursue happiness. But that's based, I think, on a pretty bad misunderstanding of what happiness really is. Because happiness is not something that you can chase down and beat over the head with a club and drag home to your cave to enjoy forever and ever. Wouldn't that be nice? It's a choice that we make every moment. And it's actually much more beautiful that way when you realize that if you embrace intellectual freedom, emotional freedom, if you make sure that your internal dialogue is clear of judgmental language, of derogatory statements, of the habits that we've been led to embrace from every authority in our lives. Happiness is a choice that you will make as a free person. To have that control over your own mind, your attitude, your outlook, that's real freedom. That's something that we can all embrace. If this truth that you want to share with other people doesn't make your life better, if you haven't figured out this part of it yet, you really have no business sharing it. I mean, how many of us when we wake up go out on the street corners, and with signs and bullhorns or with whatever equivalent of that it is in our activism and say things like, Now join me in my fear and my anger and my depression, right? Screw you. I'm going back to watching Dancing with the Stars and being a happy little wage slave. Why would I want that truth? But when you get to the heart of what freedom really is and what it can be, it becomes a beautiful thing to share with the people around you. And you can say, I live better because of this. I am happier because of this. And if you see the power of that, you see the inevitability of this movement succeeding, then looking forward with metrics, even for Ernie, can be a lot of fun and a very encouraging exercise. So thank you for indulging my libertarian fantasy math today.
The reference to we'll get to you. The reference to metrics is a thing between Adam and I because there were no metrics when I was young. I mean, let's measure half of, 0.1% of whatever, It was, with me, it's always a matter of principle. It's a premise that you operate from. Where are you looking to see the manifestation of something? If there was nothing to measure for the Levolution, coming up, or the people to embrace this concept or this idea of just expressing themselves with a simple logo of, we want revolution but with love. When Adam gave his speech in July of '08 on the West Capitol lawn, we were up there and, we introduced all the guys, and it's a whole day, and it was freaking hot. And we were, having a good time. They were trying to cut Adam's speech for a time thing because Michael Scherrer, CIA guy, went long. And I knew, I had read the speech a couple of days before, and I go, oh, hell no. This is not, Adam gets to give his speech. And the whole content of that speech was what launched Adam on the national stage. And it was the idea that humanity marches on. You can fight against it or for it. And my thing was never, that's not something, you'll see the manifestations of it. There'll be things to measure. But how do you measure something that hasn't happened yet? How do you do that? So I am looking, where are they looking? They're looking at numbers or vote percentages or totals or whatever. What if you can tap into just the duh quotient? People don't want to be ruled. Duh. People don't want their children going, fighting, and dying in wars yet. Duh. People want their money to maintain its value and be able to plan for the future and their grandkids, and duh. All these duh factors was what I based on. And it always came with philosophy and not a metric. Now, Adam tapping into this, he goes, yeah, but how do you measure it? I mean, I got so many downloads that I made so much on the book and the sales of the kind of what I'm going, yeah? Foundationed on the duh. So for me, it's always a principle. We do these sign campaigns and so, will it work, not work? I remember in marketing when we were doing a restaurant and you learn in business, everything works. It's just how much. Every effort is rewarded. It's just how much. So when you get a lot of people doing a little bit, you get a lot of impact. I look for what are the things that we can do that everybody can be a little part of, that we can serve people, we can provide them things like the Freedom Book. It's already done. You just use it. It's already done. You just put it up. It's already done. Just make it yourself. It's already done. I am looking for that big billboard there was for my first grandchild. She was the baby in the womb. That's a baby in the womb saying it's not my debt. Okay? We had them all over the valley. That was Kaylee. She's now 6 years old. When she was in the womb, they passed the tarp. And I'm going, how is this debt that they keep increasing? The slavery, they want to do a constitutional convention. Yeah? Are you going to refi the debt we already owe? Are you saying, okay, we're not going to spend and go any more debt, but you owe this one? I'm going, well, then it's a dead letter as far as I'm concerned. How does she owe that debt? How is a moral obligation, this unborn child being born in is going to pay for all the stuff that we spent in her name before she was born? How do you do that? You can't. It's a duh thing. See my point? I deal in does. So there are a lot of things you can measure after you get that. So that's kind of the little fun back and forth between Adam and I. I don't get in, if I got to measure it, I'm doing, that's not what I want. I do it because it's a duh thing. Well, we're going into the, and what happens? What Adam has experienced over the last year in having this book done is he has demonstrated the power of the does. That whole book is a big giant full of duh. The book itself is the duh. All the other stuff that happened in the book, how many downloads, how is a manifestation, is a metric, is a measurement of the value of duh.
It's happening.
I'm like, so we both reinforce each other's, opinion here, but that's what we're talking about, is this metric thing. What I want to go ahead and do is have you guys go ahead and give your question and comments while Adam is here. We'll do that. And then I want to go ahead and make sure that there's some announcements. Yeah, we'll wait the announcements after that. Is there any quick announcements anybody will have? I look at Pat. No? Everybody got anything? Did you have someone that...
Jackalope is August 1st through 8th.
Jackalope is August 1st through 8th. This is in northeastern Arizona in Forest Lakes up there.
Number 5.
Now that's another thing. This is the 5th one. Victory. We're putting the Guy Fawkes mask on the Jackalope logo. Okay? It's going to have us some fun. Now, I have committed $5,000 in cash and prizes for different categories of sustainable. I went bugged out here. I got, the food and the power and the water and the sanitation and the water. Who can tell you, I'm the guy you want in your readout because, damn it, it's cool. And I'm going to have the criteria. We went through this summer, kind of got an idea what we wanted to do, and we're going to be promoting that as part of after we do this education thing. So there's so much going on, and I'm glad that you're fortunate enough to see this happen. A lot of people didn't understand. How did the Levolution take off? How did this, it wasn't really a Ron Paul thing, it was a philosophy of liberty thing. The Levolution supported Ron being up on the podium. Ron was not, the one that made the Levolution go. It happened all its own, and he was a standard bearer for it. The standard bearer I'm looking for this is us. It's the infrastructure and the information that's available for us to skip a generation of statist, mandatory, youth indoctrinated worshipers of I pledge allegiance at 5 years old. I go to my granddaughter, I'm going, pledge allegiance? To what? What does pledge mean? I don't know. What's allegiance mean? I don't know. What's republic? I don't know. But gosh darn it, they ain't getting us to say it, or I can't go. Papa, if I don't say it, I got to sit on the bench during recess. Oh, that was my favorite. So then she comes to me on her own. She goes, Papa. She goes, the teacher stands in the back of the room, so I just don't say it. Then later, she's like, wow, you still doing that? She goes, somebody told on me. She stands at the front of the room now. But she knows. I mean, how much education is that? I mean, our kids went to all kinds of different stuff and then watch on the news what they said happened. They were there happened. I go, you get it? We get it. Did it. Done. That is what we need, is the awareness and the understanding. And I'm with you on this pursuit of happiness thing. That was intentional. The pursuit of happiness. I am allowed to pursue my happiness as long as it doesn't interfere with your pursuit of happiness. And if your happiness is how much you can inhale, peace, man. I don't care. But if it's you're going to force me to help pay for your whatever it is, we got problems. So this is a really good time. And a lot of people say, well, it kind of came and went. The light go, no. It's just getting started. For the young people that think they missed it, God, I wish I was around. Man, it's just getting going. Now you have the resources. Before, the only resource was the ability to find some meetup, to go make a sign and say what Ron Paul said. That was it. That's all you had. Now what? There's an entire infrastructure of information out there and the ability to learn on your own, at your own pace, and within 6 months, you're the freaking smartest guy at the big giant water tower. Not just a water cooler at the office. So you're in a very... I thought I was born at just the right time. Born in 61, I was old enough to remember the first moon landings. I was old enough, to be inspired and young enough by Star Trek, Star Wars. We're into movie number 7. And man, if I'm not going to take advantage of it this time. Because you want to stop wars, you need to educate yourself. And the Freedom Book is a really good way to doing that. So let's go ahead and do some questions, for Adam. Go.
Comment.
Of course. Keep it short.
Two
man.
comments. One comment. Happiness. Some of us think that happiness comes from external things and happenstance. And if I get a new car, blah, blah. Where joy, on the other hand, is internal. And I think we want to focus on the joy side. And then the other, I've just read somewhat on republic, form of government versus the monarchies. And it's a problem with us humans. We have a nature of trying to dominate and control others and stuff like that. So the republic comes in and says, oh, cool your heels or something like that. It's a function of ethics and integrity. So in my understanding of what the problems are, we had this stuff back in 1780, 1810, 1890, 1940, whatever. We're getting away from an ethical framework in this country. And it's more and more greedy, whatever. And so when the people have a lack of integrity, like I can see it all over the place compared to 40 years ago, then the leaders are jerks and characters and Muslims, shall I say? And so for leadership to have integrity would shift things. And we people need to get back to having integrity and values, decency, whatever. Thanks.
Adam, I'd like to know when you were in the military, when you were in Iraq, when you were in jail, and under what charges, please?
The 2 most exciting episodes of my life. When I was in the Marines, I joined June 18, 2000, shipped to boot camp. I enlisted in the delayed entry program about a year before that. Did 6 months. Did 6 months active duty, training, and then 6.5 years total reserves, during which time there was 3 years of active duty, and the one tour in Fallujah for 7 months, February, September 2004, with the 3rd Civil Affairs Group. And then I've been arrested, being, inclusive, more than 3 dozen times now. I kind of lost track. But I've done, maybe half a dozen overnights, a couple of weekends. I did 1 week in Philly and then 4 months in D.C. with 2 months in solitary.
And what are the usual charges?
Oh, the charges. Well, a lot of the, petty cite and release stuff arrests that I racked up as an anti-war activist were, unlawful gathering, protesting without a permit, putting, just really stupid petty stuff like that, where, we call it catch and release arrests, because it's just a way of getting activists off the street and, coming up with an excuse to fine you $50 or $100. And then for the Philly one, it was really interesting because this was at Smoke Down Prohibition, organized by N.A. Poe in Philadelphia, and it was a park police officer who brushed past me going to arrest someone else, and because his arm hit mine, I was guilty of federal felony assaulting a federal officer. And that was a really fun. I'll sum up the legal story here real quick because it's a fun, pretty instructive one. I knew that there were cameras all over the place. I knew that they weren't going to get away with this charge, and so we had a hearing with, I had a public defender, excuse me, and he was a great public defender who tore up the statement from the supervising officer from that day and was like, you didn't even see this. And just this is obvious, and he walked out of there pretty embarrassed. And this was the guy who was on my booking papers arresting me. And then a couple days later, they offered me and N.A. Poe. Now, he got arrested at the same event, slightly different circumstances. He got mauled by cops and was actually physically resisting and kicking. And in a sense, I don't want to create any liability for him, but you can see how there's a difference between that and me getting brushed past. And then they grab me from behind, and I go like this. I have a microphone still in my hand. There was no accusation of me resisting. Well, the officer actually came up to me from behind and tried to tackle me. And I just went squatted and was like, no, you're not getting away with that. And it was really funny. So then they got 3 officers behind me dragging me away, and I just went like this. And they pulled me back so fast the microphone cord ripped out of the mic, and it ended up coming with me. And so it went into my personal effects when I got arrested. And then when they offered us a I forget what the technical term was. It was like they offered to release us on our own, like on bail on our own recognizance, and it was, you know, agreeing to come back to court for those charges, and you had to sign like, I will not own a gun, I will not talk to these people. It was like all, and I'm like, no. And Poe, you know, bless his heart, 1 week in jail was enough for him. And so he signed the papers and he got out of there. And I refused to sign them. And the next day they came to my cell and said, you're getting out of here. And I went into a room and I got half of my personal effects, including the microphone. The other half were in the other department that I stopped in, that they had to just, you know, give me the little shuffle before settling me in at the special housing unit in Philly. It was supposed to be like solitary isolation, but they put me and N.A. Poe together in the same room for a week. So I'm getting let out, and it's the arresting officer who was on the stand going, here's this, sign this for your personal effects. So I signed the receipt, yes, I received this. And then he's like, and then here are these 2 citations. And it was like gathering without a permit, or, you know, like illegal protesting and, you know, not following orders or something. CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, violations for like $350 each. And I was like, nope, you can send me back to jail. I am not signing those. Good luck. And he was like, because I knew. How did I get ordered released? Not from that guy, it was from the judge. He's not going to go against the judge's order. So I know what's happening to me today. I'm not going to sign that. It was like with Jefferson Memorial, like, I'm not going to pay the dance tax, screw that. You send me back to jail. So I didn't sign them. He said, well, just take them. Okay. If I don't sign them, you have no record of me receiving them. And I've just ignored them, and they never caught up with me. I called the lawyer there to see if there were pending charges or anything. So it was a cool little strategy. Sometimes things like that work very well. Sometimes they don't.
I'm surprised you didn't get accused of assaulting an officer because you had a microphone in your hand.
Yeah, right.
Weapon dangerous.
Yes, sir.
You were in the Marine Corps on active duty in Iraq. I guess you were in Iraq.
Yes, sir.
What was your specific duty? What were you guys over there doing?
Civil affairs. It's we used to joke that it was, you know, shaking hands, kissing babies, passing out money, and getting shot at.
Yeah.
We were used as bait several times by the infantry. Hey, you go out there and we'll start shooting if someone starts shooting at you. Good luck. But we were around Fallujah for the siege in April, for the first part of that. In 2004, if you remember the history, there was the Blackwater security agents who were killed when they drove into the city and then were strung up and burned on the northern bridge.
Good.
I ran a checkpoint at that bridge for a while, and we passed out humanitarian rations, and then after the siege was over, we were just based out of Camp Fallujah, the main one, MEK, and we just did missions. We were attached to recon for a while, so we had to do site surveys at night, which was just kind of ridiculous. The big thing that I got from that was, aside from, you know, the bigger lessons, that when they were selling the war to the American people at that point, the occupation, it was, we're rebuilding, and it's these guys. And they were talking about us, like what we were doing. Like, yeah, we're giving money for projects, we're working with local communities. And I was really excited about that going to Iraq. Like, yeah, we're going to be the tip of the spear rebuilding. And then found out, no, we're just going to be attached to infantry the whole time, and this is an occupation, and they don't really have an interest in fixing these problems. They just have an interest in perpetuating this, and kind of got a sense of that firsthand. Did you have a follow-up?
Well, yeah, I do. Did you ever have, while you were there...
Russ, can you speak up? I hear you.
What's that?
Speak up.
Oh. While you were there, did you ever have any kind of political, philosophical discussions with your buddies over there?
Yeah, that's
powers that be?
That's a much better question. Unfortunately, I was not as aware as I am now. I called myself a libertarian, but I didn't really know what it meant. And this is why I'm so, you know, I try not to be too doctrinaire about, you know, my beliefs as a standard for other people. But I am very passionate about being true to the philosophical grounding of the message of freedom, and I didn't have it. And the reason was that I got the watered-down Libertarian Party at the time, not anymore. It's actually really cool to see the Libertarian Party making a turn in the last few years. Excuse me. In Texas, they refer to, you know, the Bob Barr time as the dark days of the Libertarian Party. So that was really nice to hear. But that it's getting more of that philosophical grounding. So to me, waking people up and saying, it's like almost like giving them a false cure to say, yeah, here's the Constitution. Here, this is the end of it. Here, be socially liberal, fiscally conservative, and now you get it. Now you're one of the cool kids. And it's like, no, there's something significantly deeper than that. And it took me 10 years to go from I'm a libertarian because I don't want to be a lame Republican or Democrat in high school to actually understanding what it meant philosophically. So to answer your question, when I was in Iraq, we did have some conversations, but they were, as you would compare maybe the conversation at a place like this with a crowd like this to to the Tea Party, in terms of how philosophically deep or intellectual it is. And so back then, I didn't have the same sense of purpose or direction even with my own philosophy. So.
Yeah, I love your presentation, Adam. That one thing I see though is that with this S curve, the only problem with that is if we have World War III, then that's going to chop off this S curve that we're looking.
That's not a problem. That's an accelerant.
Well, I don't know. I mean, but what do you see as? I guess that leads me to my next comment. Or what do you see as the effect of what's going on in Syria with the Russians, and now it seems like things are escalating to a much higher pitch. Because now you got super. It's not like we're going after Iraq. It's like now we're the possibility.
World War III.
Yeah, yeah. What's your opinion overall with that? Condensed down in a short period of time, because you can have a presentation just on that.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly, and I wish I could say I was following the story a lot closer than I am, but it's not my primary concern to understand how badly we're getting screwed. If anything, when I look at things like that, I just see opportunities to wake people up now.
Stop war.
I want to get the book translated to Arabic. That's one of my priorities right now. In terms of what's going on, the reason I can kind of not pay attention to it too closely and worry about it too much is that it still fits neatly into my larger worldview, which is that right now, like with the banking system, I think that the real powers that be, the smart ones, are getting their last licks in before the whole thing collapses. And you look at even the history of war from, and this decline in violence from World War I, World War II, all the way down through all the major wars of the last century. It's actually really heartening to see that the best they can come up with now is the global war on terror. How long have they been trying to get a war with Iran going? And failing at it because you can't convince people that an entire country full of people wants them to die anymore. You can't, that kind of, racism being a bad proxy term for this phenomenon, but you just can't engender that kind of disdain for outgroups in the age of the internet. Look what happened when Obama tried to get boots on the ground in Syria just a few years ago. What stopped that? It was active duty guys and spouses with the silly little placards that said, I didn't enlist to fight for Al-Qaeda in Syria in front of their faces on social media. If you can't convince the enforcement class to carry out your violence, your policies aren't going to work. So what did they do? They moved money through the back channels, through the CIA, through the State Department, to fund all these groups in Syria and give rise to ISIS and all the ways that that's now being cultivated. I mean,
and buy ISIS oil through Turkey.
The most obvious discrepancy in this big story is, okay, Mr. Obama, you really don't like ISIS. How come you don't act like it? Even if you created this whole thing, you could just stamp it out if you wanted to. It's really not that hard.
Stop funding it, maybe?
Stop funding it for starters, but even if, you accept that it, now maybe all the rumors are true. Maybe they have some legitimate grassroots base to ISIS. Maybe it's not all CIA contractors, but maybe they've legitimately stolen money from banks in the Middle East and are running oil fields and making money. And there's a major, organization there. It doesn't matter. The U.S. government has, could turn the Middle East into glass if they wanted to. You think they can't take care of ISIS? So that major discrepancy is sort of the obvious one, but I'm not worried about it escalating to a larger scale. I don't think that that's possible in this day and age of connectedness. So I think that when the dust settles, it'll be a great opportunity for people to show the way forward. And to me, I think the coolest thing that Ernie's ever done, aside from getting my speech on stage in 2008, was getting the video, the message of liberty, the cartoon, translated into Arabic. At the philosophy of liberty, excuse me, during the Arab Spring. And what's coming out of this now is just more of an opportunity for that. And I think when this kind of conflict happens in the age of the internet, the awareness value is so much higher. So,
yeah, I'd like to once again thank you for all of the work you're doing. There's a big difference between leaders and rulers. Okay, I think a lot of the general opinion out there is that, well, we need leaders. Well, they're not leaders, they're rulers. That's the frickin' problem. There's a guy on the internet that when I started waking up, a guy named Jim Davies, he had something called the Online Freedom Academy. And his math was, you know, if we start with 100 people and you double every year, just get every one of those 100 people, you get one person a year to wake up. In 20 years, we're done.
yeah.
Okay, and we've got over, you know, we're way over there, yeah. And
Well, 20 years, less than 20 years, we get started dismantling this thing.
yeah, and well, that's true. We're not done, but we now have the infrastructure. And the last thing I want to say is, like, you know, engaging people in everyday life. Okay, I mean, I've asked this question of cab drivers, of grocery store clerks, of anyone who's, you know, has any inkling of, you know, wanting to talk to me about politics. I said, I just got one question for you. Using only facts, tell me any significant difference between any government and a criminal protection racket.
Yeah.
I never get an argument. Usually they'll smile and giggle. Okay? I've never had somebody get upset with me or argue with me at all. That tells me a lot.
Yeah, so I promise I'd say one more thing about the demographics and who needs therapy. If 60% of the population votes consistently in presidential elections, I'd say about half of them do it enthusiastically and think that their vote counts. Those people will need therapy before they're ready to hear this. The 30%, the half of that who vote reluctantly, they're ready to hear this. Of the 40% that don't vote, about half of them are apathetic. And they will also need some form of therapy, a different form, to encourage them to embrace their own freedom and their own will in a different way. But I think about the other half don't vote because they know it's a waste of time, and that's already half the population. You got to when you're talking to individuals one-on-one, you got to be able to separate people who aren't ready to hear this from people who are. But if I think, you know, it's 50%, they're at least on that side. The 10% who just need to have this message put in front of them in an easy way, in a positive way, those are low-hanging fruit. And I think growing the movement to that stage, to that level of critical mass, is right around the corner. So do we want time for one quick more? And then Billy wanted to say something about Kratom, if it's okay on the schedule.
I keep asking if there was somebody here and nobody said anything. Is that you? Freaking man, be more assertive. You ain't getting up. Come on. Get your butt up here.
All right, so go ahead.
Real quick, I got another corporate job recently, and I have to watch the TV as I sit in the break room, right? They have the Fox and the CNN and all that stuff. One of the things I saw on there that was encouraging was a little ticker. It's muted, so you can't tell what they're saying. They're just up there doing this. On the ticker, it said that the majority of Americans distrust the federal government.
Yeah.
I saw that on there, and it brightened my day a little bit.
Even more dramatic than that, and is anti-government, as some people would say I am. I would never describe this fictional entity as the enemy, but there was a survey recently that made headlines kind of different when you parse out how they actually came to this conclusion from asking the questions. But they asked, do you see government as someone who is supporting you or the enemy on a scale of 1 to 10? And 27% were like within a couple points of no, government is the enemy. So like that's
They are.
and all you have to do is give those people this direction that shows them you're right. Just go one more step and figure this out and embrace a better way of living. So thank you all for your time and attention this morning. Thank you for being a part of this. I give you all free books, but we're out.
You guys need to order them. You know, contribute, get addresses, emails, have it. You can go download it for free. I mean, you know.
I have some personally signed copies, right, Adam, for sale for $15.
Okay, you can see Alma. This is, you need to read it to understand the power of it. You know, I really encourage you. We've probably given out, God, 300, 400, 500 of them. I get them by the case, and then we go to these different festivals and events, and they're, you know, free. And that doesn't even count all the downloads that we've encouraged. So I want to make sure that, you know, a lot of the people, I've been doing the Breakfast Club for 20 years. And a lot of the people, if you didn't hear it at the Breakfast Club, you didn't know about it before the internet. Then the internet started taking off and started going down. Then you started to see the value of actually meeting with people. Keith, did you ever make it out to ALEC over there yesterday? ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council, was meeting in Scottsdale, and this weekend they're doing a train with the SEAL team, shoot 50 caliber with the SEAL team. We get that woohoo and have a constitutional convention. That's what this whole thing is building up to. You're going to be hearing a lot about a limited itty-bitty compact that we all signed, and we pinky swear we're only going to do a 24-hour, one-issue thing, constitutional convention, and don't worry about it. I'm like, yeah. But the one thing they want to do is to make sure that we ingrain in this generation the obligation to pay this unpayable debt, and then we're going to limit on how much they can go over. Go over? What do you mean go over? Yeah. The states could vote. We could go over just 1.5% over what we take in. 1.5%. Why have any? Well, it's what's passable. Why is it passable to have a debt that goes over what you go? Who the hell made that up? Why is it 1.5? Why? What makes you think if you got a number where it's not 10%? Why is it not? Why isn't it none? Why isn't it negative? Why is it? I mean, what? You guys are freaking stupid. And we're being sheep if you're falling into this trap, thinking that they're going to somehow fix it for you on paper.
Government pension fund.
Yeah, the government pension fund. You know, this is. I am confident of what's going to happen, but it's not going to be inside of any kind of a government structure. It's going to be in our minds. Now, what comes after that, you know, we'll see. And I'm not really as concerned as I am that we know that what we have now and the philosophy that's backing it is wrong. Now, we're going to take a shift real quick, you know, give you, 5 minutes. 5 minutes, you know, because they'll start leaving, okay? So we'll go ahead. He passed out some information. Alma said, if there's an opportunity for him to speak, there's different, medicinal qualities of some other chemicals and smoke and kind of, and I don't trust the government. Let's see, talk to the guy here about something might save us. We've been screaming about marijuana for a long time. Now all of a sudden the politicians are saying how much they love it because they want to get tax money. But, so here's someone to give you some information on a product that I didn't know about, and I'm looking forward to hearing about it. Billy? Is that your name? Billy.
Thanks. Well, thanks, Adam. I really enjoyed your book. I want to talk to you guys about kratom. It's this plant. Any of you guys heard of it?
No.
Okay, well, the natives in Thailand have been using it for centuries, and it's new to Western civilization in just the last couple decades. If you dig freedom, you'll really love kratom, because it's going to put the opiate industry out of business. And it also replaces antidepressants, anti-anxiety pills. It treats PTSD. The veteran community is actually starting to take notice of it more because of how effective it is at treating PTSD. And a lot of other mental illnesses as well. What's cool about it is that it's a tree. With poppies, for instance, yields don't make sense. So you can only harvest so much per acre, and people have monopoly on those businesses. And if you want to be self-sustainable, it's not practical to produce that kind of medicine. Kratom is this tree where you could have one tree in your backyard and probably supply yourself and your neighbors with medicine the rest of your life for free. I handed out a bunch at Jackalope Festival, actually, and I had several people approach me and tell me that it killed their pain more effectively than real opiates do. Not only that, but it doesn't drug you up the same way as the real stuff does. It's not as addictive. It seems to bring more focus instead of dumbing you down. People who use it in the long term, in the following weeks, you notice a difference. It helps people. It helps them get on with their lives, not just because they're not on the other stuff anymore, but because it seems to heal whatever damage they may have sustained from using those other things in the past. Absolute miracle plant. I just want to tell you guys about it. Like I said, when it comes to the freedom community, everybody needs to know about it, because until now, we didn't have a way to break that dependency from the pharmaceutical companies when it comes to certain medications. You just can't grow acres and acres of certain medicinals. But you can have a kratom tree. So
It's legal to have a kratom tree?
yes, they banned it in 4 states. Here's what happened. They tried to ban it in 10 states so far, and in 6 of them, people spoke up because it's helped so many people. So people called their politician. Here in Arizona, for instance, they tried to ban it, I think it was in February 2014, and they failed because a bunch of people spoke up. There's an advocacy group behind it that fights really hard for it, and so 60% of the time we've actually won keeping it legal so far. So in only 4 states it's illegal right now.
How do you get it?
They ship it from Indonesia. So right now, because of the FDA, the market. Yeah, people just order off the internet, and the market is a very gray area because it's legal, but the FDA. You can't say anything can treat, cure, prevent a disease, or else you're calling your product a drug. And at that point, you're a criminal for selling an unauthorized drug. So it's a very gray area market. But yes, it is legal. You can buy it over the internet. You can buy it from me.
Does it grow in Arizona?
Well, it grows in Indonesia. So if you can simulate that environment in a greenhouse, sure. Keep it warm, keep it humid, yes. And this is all new territory too, so people are still learning over here in the U.S. how to actually grow this plant. There's a whole bunch of, mixed information out there because this is all new territory. That this is a plant that's going to become a household name in the coming years.
What states is it illegal in?
Yeah.
What states is legal in?
I'll list it for you right here.
Shorter list for you.
Yeah.
Legal, I'll give you the shorter list.
Yeah.
Okay. Tennessee, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Vermont.
Vermont. Wow.
Yeah, and the whole legalities behind that, the politicians are really confused on what this stuff is. For example, listen to Indiana's law. Bans the manufacture, financing, possession with the intent to sell all products such as marijuana, hash oil, hashish, salvia, or synthetic cannabinoids. Now, defining the alkaloids in kratom as synthetic cannabinoids, which it's not synthetic and they're not cannabinoids. And according to that, it's illegal. So it's just none of it makes sense. Go ahead.
What's the? Obviously cannabis has a lot of popularity because it alters your consciousness, and the fact that it has medicinal healing qualities is kind of a secondary thing in the
For
market,
some people.
in the market. Yeah, for a lot of people. Okay. Now I've never heard. Literally, this is the first time I've ever heard of this.
Mhm.
So what is the story with that? Okay, obviously you're saying it has similar, maybe superior healing qualities than cannabis. Does it have any?
What's
sort
the
of,
chemical mechanism that does?
well, what sort of mind-altering cake?
What's interesting about what makes cannabis have its properties is you got THC and CBD and the other CBDs in there. The ratios of each is what makes the medicinal effects or more psychedelic effects. Well, with kratom, you have its 2 main alkaloids, and it's actually quite interesting because both the ratios in each plant are really similar, and the roles of the first one and the second one, the roles they play with each other and the way they interact with each other is almost exactly the same when it comes to cannabis, when it comes to the stimulating versus the more sedating feel. So what's the thing kratom supplies that cannabis can't is the pain-killing aspect. You have pot smokers mention that sure it makes their mood better and whatnot, but it's not going to kill your pain. And kratom will actually kill your pain.
But does it get you high? Is the question.
Okay, so that high from marijuana, no, it does not get you that type of high. It gives you a little bit of euphoria, makes you feel good, gets you motivated. And the thing about in Thailand, over there, they look down on pot smokers as lazy, right? But they look at kratom chewers as the way we look at coffee drinkers. It's associated with hard work. They chew it all day long in the fields, and it gives people motivation, makes them feel good doing their job.
So marijuana demotivator,
Yes.
kratom motivator.
Correct. Correct. If you abuse marijuana, you can become lazy.
Yeah, I
You
just
abuse
became
kratom,
more
you become
productive,
motivated.
man.
Yeah, since I found kratom, I've been more productive in my whole
It's
life.
the drug of choice
Yeah.
for slaves. It keeps them working.
But
Screw the
You
man, do
mentioned
marijuana.
that you sell it too or something. Do you buy a plant from you? Or do you have a phone number also then?
yes, I'll give you my information. Yes, you can buy the product and the plants from me.
I want the information too.
Sure.
So does it come? Do you smoke it? Do you ingest it? Do you shoot it? I mean, what?
You drink it. It's like a tea. So basically, you could either get it in crushed leaf or powdered leaf. They basically just take the crushed leaf, put it through a flour mill, and at that point you just mix it with your warm water and drink it.
Okay, so it's the leaf of the tree.
That's
not
all
the
it is.
bark,
It's not an
the
extract.
Bud, it's not a flower.
No.
It's just a freaking leaf.
Just the leaves.
So
You'll
it's
see.
like coca leaves or something.
Yeah, it's very comparable
Like a
to like
tea
coca
leaf.
leaves, except it's
Like a tea leaf.
correct.
You want contact information on YouTube? Say it,
Alright.
and it'll be on here.
Okay. My phone number is 480-204-8528.
Say it again.
I hope the FDA is not watching. 480-204-8528.
And it allegedly does these beneficial things.
Yeah. This is what I've heard.
I've heard rumors.
So they say.
If it's from one country, is it different than from another? You said Indonesia type.
Yeah,
stuff, but
yeah, all the
are there
di-
competing countries out there, and is one
Or different plants,
the
species.
better one, and different variations like Catalina Island and Newport Beach?
Well, the different strains that you get, the names go along with it. So like I offer Thai, Borneo from Borneo Island, Bali from Bali Island. So the names associate where it comes from. There's a lot of controversy behind that because this is all still new to all of us. So for instance, in Thailand, it's banned. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the politics behind marijuana, why it was banned, and with kratom, I mean, there's just a few year difference between they just banned kratom a few years after we banned marijuana in the 40s, and it was all political. The government was taxing and regulating opium, and so they raised their tax rates. More and more people switched over to the kratom, discovered that the locals that have been chewing this plant for centuries, that all the opium users started realizing, okay, wow, this plant could actually get us off this drug. Government figured they can't tax this tree because it just grows everywhere, so they banned it and started cutting the trees down. But to answer your question,
How big a tree is it? Is it like that? Is it a bush? I mean, what does it look like?
anywhere from 10 to 100 feet tall. It's a real tree, but you won't get it more than 50 feet. That's very rare for it to get taller than that.
When they ship it to you, how big is it when it comes to
50 feet.
Well, it's about that big.
Okay, so now can it get past U.S. Customs?
Yes, and the FDA has put out import alerts and whatnot on it, basically making it so that they scrutinize on whoever is receiving the stuff, so that if they see, for instance, there was a lady over there in Goodyear who went on our website and she started making claims, like I'm doing right now, and she's was a major retailer out here, and they actually raided and arrested her. The FDA did.
Hey, one more. What does it cost?
Well, basically it's $10 an ounce, and everybody takes different amounts. So if for instance, I usually take about 1/8 of an ounce, so with that ounce I get about 8 doses.
How about a tree? Cost of a
What's the
tree?
tree cost?
$40 a tree. I only have so many available right now, but there's more coming.
Well, that's better than $400 an ounce.
Yeah, remember, it comes from this giant tree that the stuff is dirt cheap.
And you take Bitcoin.
I do. Right.
You take Federal Reserve notes?
No, yes.
Okay, real quick, we gotta wind this up. Let's get some questions.
Wild in Indiana?
What?
I'm sorry?
Will it grow in the wild in Indiana?
No.
No.
It's a tropical plant.
Keep it humid and hot, basically.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a question. I was watching.
Gotta yell.
I can't.
Well, dude, translator.
Tell me and I'll yell.
I was watching this psychology show this morning, and they were showing like a normal brain compared to a stroke brain, a normal brain compared to an Alzheimer's brain, a normal brain compared to PTSD, stuff like that. And with PTSD, I didn't realize that it actually had spots in the brain. And does this heal the brain?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that because I can't say anything for sure.
Allegedly.
But from what we're seeing, from my personal experience, from talking with so many other people, I've been introduced. It's become my passion. I've been introducing a lot of people into it. From what we've been observing, it seems to heal people in a way. So I would be really interested in seeing something like that. People actually do a brain scan of somebody a year later after using Kratom to see the difference of their PTS brain versus after the fact.
Could you spell that? T-R-A?
Kratom.
And he has some handouts that's around.
Take that one.
Yes, I want one.
Good job. You know, this is when we had some doctors come and speak on the use of marijuana and pain relief and such. And then they go out to Sun City and it's standing room only in a basement of a church. I mean, you know, it's just amazing how people are in need of these various things, but you don't have the freedom to pursue your own happiness. And that's what it's really all about. So thanks for coming. We had a good time. Hopefully you learned something. It's a good show. Say hey to Adam. Alma has some books, and you need some new relief and medicine and medication. If he gave out his phone number, so I mean, damn, and Pat.
Quick question. The National Football Championship game going to be played in Glendale in another month or two. Is the 9/11 Truth Movement planning anything?
There's a Super Bowl here this next year?
No, the college championship.
Oh, college champion. Okay. Well, which is what, the bowl of the Fiesta Bowl? You mean?
Fiesta Bowl.
Is that what they call it?
Fiesta Bowl. That is this football thing. Okay.
Is the 9/11 Truth Movement planning any kind of a protest?
Yeah, we'll do whatever you do. Start, man. What are you talking about? Oh, you want me to do it?
No, I was asking if you knew.
No, I don't know enough. I'm probably going to be doing my Stop Wars thing.
Okay.
That's my thing, man. I'm telling you, you want to know how it's I focus on one thing until I'm done with that thing. And everybody knows about the thing, and we thinged it. So then we go on to the next thing. So this is, I tell you, you see this big black, that's all copper. I built this box because my fish were going to die again for a third year. And I needed to have a hot water circuit. I got to turn the pump on now. And then Mike and Brian built this tent covering so that it kind of retained the heat because it was losing it at night. So thank you, Mike and Brian, for doing that. But I finished my aquaponic unit, insulated box, kind of whatever, for my daughter. I had to finish that so we could do my son's painting on his truck so I can get ready to do the sign making, and we're busy. So you guys that want to help, next Friday afternoon, you come here, and all that weekend, Saturday and Sunday, but I need some help on Friday, we're going to be mass producing hundreds of these signs that are going around the country on the opening of Star Wars, Stop Wars, Home Educate. Thanks for coming. Peace. Before you guys run off. Wait. Frank's got to give out some goodies.
We always have a good time at the Breakfast Club, right?
Yeah.
All right, there's some books over there on a little stand. If you don't see what you like on the stand, there's 2 bags down beside it. You can dig through those. First chance to look at the books. Oops, I can't even read it. 8039. 8039.
What's that number?
8039.
Whoever bought one before or after Brian.
Gotta be here to win.
8024.
All right.
Chance for a book over there. Whoever come up with 39. Okay, got it over there. 8042. 8042. Got another one over there. All right.
Okay, we're not going to have a breakfast club on the 2nd of January. That's right after New Year's, and I'm going to be bow hunting with my son
While drinking.
While drinking.
Hunting prairie dogs again?
Javelina. Dead javelina.
See you guys later.
Give me a knife. You know, they have these big boars.